David and Goliath, a story of impossible victory. Chapter 1. Tensions in the Valley. The nation of Israel was standing on the edge of a crisis. The valley of Elah, nestled between the rolling hills of Judah, had become the stage for a conflict not just of armies, but of faith versus fear. The Israelites, under the command of King Saul, stood on one ridge, their tents stretching back across the hillside. Across the valley, on the opposing slope, the Philistine army had entrenched themselves, men hardened by war, equipped with iron weapons, and driven by hatred for Israel. But this was no ordinary military standoff. The two armies did not rush into battle. Instead, for 40 days, morning and evening, the silence of the valley was broken by the sound of a voice that sent chills through the bones of every Israelite soldier. His name was Goliath, and he was a giant of a man, the champion of the Philistines. Chapter 2. The giant from Gath, Goliath was from Gath, one of 5 powerful Philistine cities. He was likely descended from the Rephaim, an ancient race of giants that had once lived in Canaan. His height was nearly 10 feet tall. His armor was made of bronze scales, overlapping like a serpent's skin, weighing over 120 pounds. His spear was like a weaver's beam, and the iron tip alone was heavier than many swords. He would walk into the valley each day, his bronze greaves shining in the sunlight, his armor-bearer carrying his shield ahead of him. He wasn't just mocking Israel, he was mocking Israel's God. "Choose a man to fight me," he bellowed. "If he wins, we will serve you. But if I prevail, you will become our slaves. Now, defy the armies of Israel this day." Each time he shouted, the men of Israel shrank back. No one came forward, not even King Saul. Saul, once the tallest and bravest man in Israel, now hid behind the curtain of his tent, tormented by fear and regret. His disobedience had cost him the favor of the Lord. He still wore the crown, but the presence of God had already shifted to someone else. Chapter 3. A boy from Bethlehem. Meanwhile, in the quiet town of Bethlehem, a boy named David tended sheep in the wilderness. He was the youngest of 8 sons of Jesse, a man of simple means but deep roots. David was perhaps 16 or 17, still growing into his voice, still unnoticed in the eyes of men, but already chosen in the eyes of God. The prophet Samuel had secretly anointed him some time earlier. Though David went back to the fields afterward, something inside him had shifted. He was no longer just a shepherd. He was walking with the awareness that God had a plan. David spent his days defending his flock against predators, playing his lyre, and composing songs of worship. He knew the voice of God in the silence of the hills. He had seen the Lord's strength when lions attacked. He had faced down bears in defense of helpless lambs. He did not yet know that these quiet battles were training grounds for destiny. Chapter 4. An errand from the Father. One morning, Jesse sent David to the battlefield with a simple task: bring bread and cheese to his older brothers and report back on their condition. David obeyed immediately. He rose early, left the sheep with a keeper, and traveled miles through the rugged terrain to reach the valley of Elah. When he arrived, he saw the two armies lined up in their usual positions. He could feel the fear in the air. And then, just as he reached the camp, Goliath stepped forward again. David stopped. The soldiers stood frozen. No one moved. David's heart burned. "Who is this Philistine?" he asked. "How dare he mock the armies of the living God?" His brothers tried to shut him up. His oldest brother, Eliab, hissed, "Why are you even here? Go back to your sheep." But David wouldn't be silenced. "Is there not a cause?" he said. Word of David's boldness spread quickly. Soon he was summoned to stand before the king. Chapter 5. Before the king, David stood in front of Saul, still just a boy without armor, without a sword, without fear. "Let no man's heart fail," David said. "I will fight this Philistine." Saul laughed, half in pity. "You are not able to fight him. He's been a warrior from his youth. You are only a boy." But David answered, "When I was keeping my father's sheep, a lion came and took a lamb. I went after it. I struck it and rescued the lamb from its mouth. When a bear came, I did the same. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and bear will deliver me from this Philistine." It was not bravado. It was faith born from experience. Saul, with no better options, relented. "Go," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." Chapter 6. 5 stones and a sling. Saul offered his armor, but David could not wear it. It was heavy, unfamiliar. He took it off and walked instead to a nearby stream, kneeling down in the shallows. There he selected 5 smooth stones, placing them in his shepherd's pouch. He wasn't taking 5 because he lacked faith Goliath had for warrior brothers.
Ow.
David came prepared. With his staff in one hand and his sling in the other, he walked alone into the valley.
Ow.
Every step was a declaration of trust. Chapter 7. Faith Meets Fear. When Goliath saw David, he was insulted. "A child with no armor? No sword? Am I a dog?" Goliath roared, "that you come to me with sticks? Come here and I'll feed your flesh to the birds of the air." David stood firm. "You come against me with sword, spear, and javelin," he shouted. "But I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands. All the earth will know there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly will know that the Lord saves not with sword or spear, for the battle belongs to the Lord, and he will give you into our hands." Then David ran, not away, but toward the giant. He reached into his pouch, pulled out a stone, placed it in the sling, and with one swift motion, whirl, whirl, release. The stone flew like lightning, guided not by hand, but by heaven, and struck Goliath square in the forehead. The giant stumbled, he swayed, and then he fell, face down, into the dust. Chapter 8. Victory in the Valley. Silence, and then shock. David ran to the fallen warrior, drew Goliath's own sword from its sheath, and with one clean motion, cut off his head. The Philistine army broke into panic and ran. The Israelites surged forward with a cry of victory, chasing them all the way back to their cities. The valley, once filled with fear, now echoed with praise. Chapter 9. Legacy of the Shepherd King. David returned to Saul carrying the head of the giant, but it was the beginning of much more. That battle marked the birth of a leader, the rising of a king, not one chosen by man, but by God. David would go on to slay tens of thousands, to write psalms that would become songs for generations, to rule Israel with justice and passion, and to stumble and rise again. But the legacy began here, in a valley, with a stone, with courage rooted in faith. Final reflection. What giants are you facing? The story of David and Goliath is not just history, it's hope. It reminds us that God does not need your strength, he needs your surrender. He doesn't look for the tallest, the strongest, the best trained. He looks for hearts that trust him completely. What giants are standing before you? Fear, addiction, doubt, shame? You don't need a sword. You need faith. You don't need to be qualified, just available. Because with God, the battle is not yours.
Ow.
The battle is the Lord's.